I think in your speech, too, you did a really good job of A, not coming across as condescending in the slightest, but B, saying, hey, this conflict has been happening now for decades, and where this conversation is entering it is not at the beginning. It has been years and years before. And on social media, you wrote this to the class that you, quote, appreciate your passion, your respect, and your willingness to listen and engage, even on the most difficult topics. When you think about the protests on campuses over the past few months, the past few weeks, especially when they've reached a boiling point, how do you think college students have been engaging?
Um, I think that the vast majority of college students, for them, this is not their top issue. They've been asked recently in polls, some 13% think the Middle East is a top issue for the election. Far more of them talk about immigration and abortion and the economy and their loans and all of these more prosaic things than Gaza. But, all it takes is a couple of students to say something idiotic, right? I mean, to show fealty to Hamas, to say something anti-Semitic against Jews, and then you've got someone with their phone running, and they grab that clip and they promote it out there, and then you've got a whole bunch of political entrepreneurs taking advantage, in a performative way for themselves, and suddenly people think that that's what these students are all about, and that's not what these students are about at all. Look, I think that what the students are really about is that, for you and I, and me, more me than you, who spent a lot of time in the Cold War period. Israel was the underdog. Israel was the small country, the country that the Americans, the Europeans supported after the Holocaust, and never again meant that we had an obligation to make sure that an entire group of people could not be identified and killed by virtue of something they had no control over, by an accident of birth, by a cultural, a religious signifier. Never again. But young people today don't have that experience. Young people today see Israel as the most powerful country in the Middle East, militarily, offensively, and defensively, and intelligence collection, with the support of the United States and with diplomatic relations with countries in the region. They see the Palestinians as the dispossessed, as the little guy, and like many young people all over the world, they're rooting for the powerless. They're rooting for the disenfranchised. And, it's kind of like, and America does that a lot. I mean, March Madness, we all love to see that 16 seed, get into the Final Four. That excites us. And I think for a lot of the students, that's what it's about. It's about, wait a second, I thought that we were supposed to support the dispossessed. I thought, like the Statue of Liberty, I thought we're supposed to welcome those people. And suddenly, for a lot of young people, the United States doesn't look like the good guy. For a lot of young people, the United States looks like they're on the side of the villains. They're on the side of the oppressors. They're willing to support repression and death just because we happen to be allied with this one country that's friendly. Now, the reality is, like so many things in the world, that the truth is much more complicated than that. The reality is that people have given the Palestinians the short end of the stick for decades now, and not just the Americans, the Gulf states, who didn't care, who did the Abraham Accords irrespective of the fact that the Palestinians were getting nothing, right? And the fact that the Palestinians themselves had opportunities for a two-state solution, and their own government failed them. Too kleptocratic, too incapable, too unwilling to take risks. And so the Americans, after years and years of trying to be not an honest broker, because you can't be an honest broker if you're on one side, but facilitating a deal, the Americans basically said, okay, enough. Everybody said enough. And of course, that, given the state of play for what it means to be a Palestinian without any opportunities for education, any opportunities for proper health care, any opportunities to develop a life for yourself and your children, they got increasingly desperate. And people that become increasingly desperate increasingly are willing to do things that the rest of us find wholly unacceptable.